good morning to everybody, and I suppose it's good afternoon to Karen Ferris. So glad to have you back. Um, Looking forward to our conversation. Just to our listeners, viewers, this is episode 3 of season 3. Yeah, so we started late this year, um, had a bit of a format change. So, no, I'm not going to keep you for now. No, only 30 minutes. Karen, so glad to have you with us again. Um, and
I'm
if
really
you can
glad to,
maybe,
yeah, glad you invited me back. I must have been okay.
yeah, no, it was great. It was awesome.
Mm.
If you can just quickly to the viewers, listeners, to give a quick introduction of who you are, where you come from, and 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 why you qualified to talk about leadership and especially change in leadership. Yeah.
Yeah, good question. Hey, yes, so Karen Ferris, I'm based in Melbourne, Australia, and I have been since 1998 when I emigrated from the UK. And it was IT service management that brought me out here. So I was offered a job with a consultancy and training company. But as well as my foot in the service management camp, I have a passion about organizational change. And I work with a lot of organizations to uplift their leadership capability as well.
Okay, I'm not ignoring you. I'm looking for the book on the side of me, and it's not here. So Karen gracefully wrote one of the chapters of the very Unwrapped and Applied book that was specifically about. Actually, you wrote two. You did the leadership one also. So
Hmm.
the so and that's where I met her. With the world of respect for what she's doing. So um, looking forward to hearing why you specifically said you wanted to talk about the great realization. What do you mean by the great realization?
Yeah. So a number of years ago now, I think it was in May 2021, a guy called Anthony Klotz coined the term the Great Resignation, talking about the particularly in the US, the en masse voluntary resignation people were making from their organizations. And they cited a lot of causes like wage stagnation and rising cost of living and people looking for to address those things. And I said at the time, I think it's more about the great realization. So we'd given our employees, if you like, well, all of us who were able to, especially those of us able to work remotely and work from home, we've given them like 2.5 years of time to reflect and realize, and many realize they actually deserved more from their employers than they were currently getting. And they'd had a chance to change their lifestyle. They started to look at their professional lives and personal lives and say, yeah, I want more. So while salary and benefits are always going to be important to people, we all want a decent standard of living. A lot of employees are taking that as given. I expect a decent salary for my skills and capabilities. But what I'm really looking for an employer to differentiate themselves is to give me a career path, to give me a sense of purpose and belonging in the organization, um, demonstrate that they do adhere to the value of diversity, inclusion, and equity, etc. That they'll look after my mental well-being in the workplace, um, that they will give me the work-life balance that I now believe that I deserve. And of course, the realization also came with the realization that having worked remotely, we proved we could do it and retain productivity, etc. So employees were suddenly in the driving seat going, I can basically promote, not all, but where I could work for any employer, sorry, anywhere in the world. I have a smorgasbord of organizations I can look for employment that I never even thought of before. So it was that realization that I can go and find something better. I'm not limited to just looking at organizations in Melbourne. I could work for an organization anywhere in Australia or the US or wherever now. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's sort of leads to the next thing is that the management and leadership of organizations now have to sort of reinvent the organization,
Yeah.
cater for an organization that looks differently, but they also have to reinvent themselves. Um, because
Yeah.
they now need new skills and capabilities and competencies to deal with a world that's substantially different.
Yeah.
Um,
And it is substantially different. And we've seen, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners and viewers, have seen the demand for people to go back to the office. And, you will go back, and you'll go back 2 days a week. And I go, why? Or you'll go back on a Thursday and a Friday. And I'm like, why? And that just says to me that despite everything that we've learned in the last 2 to 3 years, there isn't an acceptance that things have changed. Expectations have changed. Employees want to continue with that flexibility. They want to work when they want, where they want, how they want. And there's this sort of running scared from leadership in organizations going, oh, can't we just go back to how it was before March 2020? And they're trying to. And rather than, and it's a knee-jerk reaction, to say, we've got all this office space. What are we going to do with it? Oh, we need people in it. No, you don't. Reinvent it. Innovate. Think differently. It's going to be mayhem because we won't know where people are. Well, you will know where people are. And it's like the biggest argument that's been made, it's culture. It'll damage our culture. Well, culture never lived in an office. Not in my experience, anyway. Culture is not bricks and mortar. It's about values, beliefs, and shared experiences. So you can knock that one off the table. That then, oh, we won't be able to collaborate. Yes, you will. You can collaborate virtually. And they're forgetting that going back to the office should be the preference of the employee and the team. So leaders have to work with their teams about the best model for them to retain that flexibility and work-life balance. Don't say I have to be in the office 2 days a week, when for 5 days I could be far more productive working from home because of the nature of the work that I'm doing. If I and the team, we say, we do need to collaborate on X, Y, Z, and it will actually make sense for us to get together to do that. It just feels that we'd be better. Then get together and do it. But there has to be a reason that the team agree that it's to go to a place. It doesn't have to be the old office. It could be any working space that they come together in person. So remote working doesn't mean that nobody ever gets together again. It's by choice and preference to be more collaborative, more innovative, or productive, whatever that's going to work. And we saw it was evident in March, at the beginning of the pandemic. And in March 2020, there's a company called Top 10 VPN. And I may have mentioned this last time we spoke, but they've done a study on the demand for employee surveillance software globally. And in March 2020, it shot up by 80%. Now, that's just saying leaders if they don't have line of sight of somebody, and I'm using the term leader loosely, if they don't have line of sight of someone, they think they're not working. And the only response was to put monitoring software onto laptops and whatever. And that just said to me, that was just an indictment on the poor leadership we have in organizations, that it's what Microsoft termed productivity paranoia. The fear, if I can't see them, I don't know if they're working. Now, you and I know, even if you can see someone sat at a desk for 8 hours, you don't know that they're being productive. So it just doesn't make any sense. And the first thing that's come out of that study by Top 10 VPN is that demand hasn't dropped. It's continued.
That's terrible.
So I thought it was a knee-jerk reaction. Oh my God, I've got to monitor what they're doing. It hasn't. It's fluctuated, and it's just started. The last one they did, it just started to drop. But one of the narrative they said is, has the damage been done? And I'm like, absolutely, it's been done. And I know very intelligent employees who say to me, I know I'm being watched, so I put a weight on my keyboard to make sure the key is always pressed, so my leader doesn't think I'm away from the desk. I'm like, that is no way to work. So
Yeah.
we do have a leadership crisis. We have, and I will say, Johan, that most leaders want to be good leaders. They don't get out of bed in the morning going, I want to do a really bad job today, and I want people to dislike me. They want to do it, but we need to enable them and equip them. This is a whole new situation that many have never been in before. They've never had to lead a distributed team. So I'm talking to leaders about reinventing themselves. It's really them realizing that you cannot measure performance based on hours at a desk. That's not how we measure performance. And you need
It's
to get
output,
over.
not activity.
Yeah. You need to be able to measure outcomes and the value delivered. It doesn't matter if I work 6 hours or 8 hours or 10 hours, if I deliver the outcome you need at the time that you need it.
Yeah.
So it's about the value that I deliver. And that's a big shift, a mindset shift for many people leading teams, because hours are easier to measure than outcomes. So it goes back to leaders co-creating goals and performance measurements with the team members, so they understand what the outcome at the end is required. And the leader should be there not to direct them, but to provide direction and be there to support them when they're needed. So we also need to get leaders to reinvent themselves, to stop being micromanagers, because that is just devastating for employees who are just told, you have to do it this way, and they're being, directed every second of the day. And the thing with the surveillance and the monitoring is that all that says is to an employee is, I do not trust you. I do not trust you to be working and doing what I've asked you to do. And that is devastating. And, we know that what's the saying, it takes years to build trust and a moment to lose it, and forever to get it back, so that's devastating for both the leader and the employee when that trust just breaks down.
Yeah. And the thing with trust is, and I think it was Tom Peters that said it, the way you trust somebody is to trust them. Yeah. This argument, but I can't trust my team because in the past they've shown themselves not to be trustworthy. Well, that's an indictment on you.
Yes.
They will not trust you because you do not trust them. And so it really starts with leadership. And isn't it amazing, how much of what is needed today is 60 years old in terms of lean management?
It's nothing new. And it's like there's research being done that says, most people get themselves into a people leadership position in the late 20s, early 30s. The first development or support they get for themselves as a leader is in their early 40s. So they've had like a decade or more to struggle, flounder, try and do things the right way. But the only role model they've had is the bad boss that went before them and before them. So we need to.
And even if they get that developmental help, most of the business schools includes in their curriculum still stuff from the 1920s. I mean, I keep on saying to people, forget about Frederick Taylor, think about Frederick Laloux.
Which is true. I mean, the things I talk about and work with leaders today is that, like we've just talked about, how to measure performance in on a value and outcomes basis, leading with empathy. And that's easy to say, but there's so many people just don't really understand what empathy really is and the impact that it has. And empathy is more important today because, as we alluded to earlier, we have employees who've changed their lives during COVID. I know people that have moved into rural areas because the housing prices were cheaper. They could get a bigger house to be working from home and for a better lifestyle, if you like. And they're now being told they have to go back to the office, and they're like, whoa, whoops, the commute is not, it's just too much. So we need leaders who can empathize that this is the situation we found ourselves in. Everyone who's been through the pandemic has been through different experiences. Some people lost friends and family. Some people, struggled financially maybe, or had concerns, financial concerns, lots of different things. And we need leaders who can empathize that everyone is different. And that's when they go, oh my God, I've got a team of 20. I need to know each one of them fairly intimately in a work situation. Well, you do. That is your job as a leader, to know how they're going, how they're faring, what are their aspirations, and trust them to get on with the job. And again, for many, it's a mindset shift. And we need leaders who really, really look after the well-being of employees. And not someone will say, oh yeah, check in, how you're going. But do you really mean it? Are you really saying that with empathy? And are you avoiding asking it in case the person says, I'm not doing very well, actually? Because leaders fear that response. And I say to them, you don't have to be a physician or a psychologist or psychiatrist. That's not your job. Your job is to help that person find the support they need to be the best they can in the workplace. And just to check in on a regular basis, how you're going. And that's pretty easy to do, but there's a fear. And if we get rid of that fear, and we get rid of the, what's the word I'm looking for? There's a word just gone. Looking down on people because they say I've got a mental health stigma. That's the word. I've got a mental health condition. Allowing people to talk about it, and for leaders to be vulnerable. And when I say that word, I see the shock. You want me to be vulnerable? Yeah, I want you to show that you're human.
Yeah,
you're just the same as everybody else, because they have an expectation that when they became a leader, they had to have all the answers. And they had to just rely on themselves. And I'm like, well, why do you have a team then?
Yeah.
What's the point of having a team if you don't have to have all the answers? You solicit the answers with your team.
Yeah.
And like you said, Jan, this isn't new stuff, but it's like the penny just hasn't dropped in all these decades.
Yeah. So just getting back to vulnerability, maybe for somebody who is sitting here listening to this and cringing, vulnerable doesn't mean that you have to tell people about all your bad traits. But as Karen said, vulnerability is just showing your employees that you also have got issues. You don't have to talk about the issues. That you also make mistakes. That you're also afraid sometimes.
I don't have all the answers. I have made mistakes. I have struggled in the past. I've worried about whatever it might be. Like you say, you don't have to go into the nitty-gritty detail. If you don't, there's a degree of sharing. But if you can say to an employee, and you can only empathize when you're vulnerable yourself, when you can empathize and say, I haven't been in exactly your position, but this is a situation I've experienced. And just sharing that, not to say my situation was worse than yours, you acknowledge it was different, but you're sharing that you're not stoic, you are human, and you will make mistakes. And that vulnerability is a sign of courage, an absolute sign of courage that you're prepared to share.
That's an interesting comment you just made. You're not stoic, you're human. I always saw stoicism as as being a good human.
Or maybe I've used the wrong term in the wrong context. I'm sort of
Marcus
meaning,
Aurelius. Yeah.
yeah, probably the wrong term.
Yeah.
That, you're not, you are vulnerable. You're not casting, iron and wrapped in armor and, protected, and you'll never
Yeah.
feel
Yeah,
anything, because you
absolutely.
will.
No, I get that. I just thought that you meant something else a bit there, that there was something that I didn't see. Um,
Mm,
so for when I'm bored, I read the classics, but I must
mm.
be really bored before I do that. Yeah, and one of my favorite classics is
Yeah.
Marcus Aurelius' letters. Yeah.
Yeah. And of
Um,
course, there's some things that leaders who maybe have been good leaders have also got to reinvent themselves, because there's some, we've now heard the term, especially now during the pandemic and remote working, about proximity bias. And it's a natural bias whereby a person sees somebody in a better light if they're in the same vicinity that they are. And
yeah.
that can lead to, if a leader is in a room with some of the team and the rest of the team are on the screen, there is a preference to give somebody a piece of work or a nice piece of work or a project to do to the person in the room.
Mm.
It's a natural bias that just happens. So
I
leaders
can
need to be
understand
aware of
that, because 90% of communication is non-verbal. Yeah,
that.
so with our remote communication, yes, yeah, and I keep on saying to people, don't do off-camera remote meetings.
Totally agree.
That's a really bad idea. But you
Yeah,
still can't see somebody's body language.
no, yeah, totally
You
agree. You
can see
can't
their
see their
face.
expression. Um, you can hear the tone, but you lose
Yeah,
that if you can't see the face.
yeah,
Um, and like you say, that if someone's sitting there folded up, falling asleep
yeah.
or whatever it might be, that's giving you a clue about something's not quite right. So,
I,
yeah.
I must make a confession. The other day, luckily, I muted myself and I was off camera, but I was in a presentation, and this person were going on and on and on. After a while, I felt something on my shoulder. Was my wife waking me up?
Oh, dear. Yeah. I mean, it's like, I understand some people may have connectivity issues or whatever, and that's the exception.
Mm.
But to go into a meeting and keep your camera off is like sitting physically in an office and putting a bag over your head. You can't see my facial expression. And it's like saying, I am going to hide from you how I may be really feeling. But as a
Yeah,
leader, I want to know. I want to know if you're falling asleep because I'm talking a load of rubbish and going on and on and on. That's a lesson for me as a leader. And,
yeah,
and that's the other thing about the thing, leaders, again, not new, but leaders are reinventing themselves. Ask for feedback.
yeah,
Proactively and deliberately ask for feedback. How can I be a better leader? And we have to provide a safe environment for our employees to do that.
yeah. That's interesting.
I think we've lost you, Johan. I don't know what you were pressing or whether you're coming back. Yes, you're coming back. That's good.
Okay, start the cam. I think I pulled the camera, the camera cable out when I reached over. Um, we need to check. I'm not going to look for it now. There's some guidance in terms of working remotely and doing meetings remotely. And I think and the book is available for free on the Exxon website, by the way. So
Yeah.
if you don't know about that stuff, go and download it. But I'm not saying it's the best
No.
guidance. It's guidance, yeah.
Yeah, there's so much. I mean, I subscribe to HBR, and there's a brilliant article in the April, April? Yeah, April 23,
Okay.
about GitHub. No, not GitHub,
Okay.
GitLab. GitLab, who have been
Okay.
a remote organization, totally remote since day one.
Yeah.
They don't have any office owned or rented for their 2,000 employees across 60 countries. And they are extremely successful in terms of the financials and the culture rating of the organization. So the CEO talks about how they went, the lessons they learned along the way. There's some great insights, both the things they got wrong and the things that they've got right and found out working. And they are actively trying to share their experiences with other people. So don't go it alone. Talk to these organizations that have done it and been successful.
So that is March, April. Is that correct?
So it's
Harvard
Harvard
Business Review, March, April.
March to March, April. And it's about
okay, cool.
Yeah.
The whole story is actually an amazing story, because they to solicit the involvement of a community of people who's into what they do, to help them get stuff done. And I mean, I think when they sold to Microsoft, there was something like 35 employees, and the amount of money that they got for that was just astounding. What they
so
managed
I often
to
look
do.
at
So
Glassdoor, to see how employees rate the culture of the organization, and they just get a brilliant score for the culture and their values. So from that perspective, a great place to work, according to the employees that are already there or have been there. But also financially, they're just, knocking it over. So they're doing something right. But yeah, it's about finding out what other people are doing. Download those guides. They're not all going to be perfect, but they'll give you ideas. But the big thing is to do it with your staff, to do it with your employees. And this comes back to organizational change. Don't do it to them, do it with them. And, it's about treating employees as adults.
Yeah.
Because that's what they are. So explain that, we're on a journey. We're on a journey. We don't have all the answers. We're going to get it wrong sometimes, but we're on an experiment to find out the best working model for us. So what are your preferences? What would you like to see? We have to meet business outcomes. Can we match those business outcomes with your preferences? Or do we have to adjust the preferences to meet the business outcomes? And employees will understand that. You can't just go totally remote and the business goes through the floor. You've still got to maintain the business strategy and goals. But how can we do that to meet your lifestyle that you would like us to support? And it's just talking to people.
Yeah, and bearing in mind that, when most of those bad behavior, I don't even want to call it management styles, because was defined that people were unschooled, and therefore they needed much more directive involvement from people higher up. Today we're working with knowledge workers, and I mean, if you employed a knowledge worker where you do need to micromanage them, you've employed the wrong person.
Absolutely. And it's like, it comes back to the trust thing, isn't it? Why do you employ someone who you turn around and go, I can't trust you? You employed them because you trusted them to do the job that they said they could do. And then all of a sudden, as soon as they're on board, we're going, nah, we don't trust you. So, yeah.
Okay. Hello, are you still there?
I'm still here, but you're freezing.
A challenging morning this morning.
You're freezing from my end. I don't know.
Okay. Can you see me now?
I can see you. It's just the voice is getting, I'm losing what you're saying.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. So, yes, I can. 5 things that a leader or manager must do to be a leader of the future?
Emotional intelligence.
What would you say?
Again, not new.
Yeah.
Being self-aware of your own strengths and weaknesses and addressing them,
Yeah.
getting feedback, and being aware of other people's feelings. That's one. Leading with empathy, and a real empathy, not sympathy. Get over it. Sorry for that, but get over it. Really empathizing for another person's position. And we often say empathy is walking a mile in someone else's shoes. I say it's not. It's knowing how they feel walking in their shoes, not how you would feel, because you are different to them. They have to do the right performance measurement we've talked about, value delivered, outcomes, and get over that productivity paranoia. They have to treat employees as adults and trust them to do what they've been asked to do. And that is powerful. When you say to someone, here's what I'd like you to do, you don't have to say, I trust you. You demonstrate that, saying, these are the goals, this is the time frame, this is our budget. I am here to support you. Ask me questions whenever you like, but it's over to you to do it how you want. So no micromanagement. Let's just get that out of the way. That is not what a leader does. And understanding, I suppose the fifth thing, really understanding that there is no one size fits all. There never was. You're dealing with people. They're all different, and they'll be different one day than they will be the next. We're emotional beings. So we can't just have a carte blanche approach to leading people. We have to adapt. And that can be on a daily basis, because people change on a daily basis. And it's recognizing that. And that sort of comes full circle back to that emotional intelligence and understanding how other people operate.
Awesome. I forgot to look at comments today.
Oh dear.
Joel, hello. Simone, that's Simone Jo Moore from France.
Yes,
say hi.
Hi, Simone.
So also one of the people that was involved with our project with Verisum. So and shortly one of our guests on Get It. So Karen, once again, it was an absolute pleasure having you here. Lots of insightful, I don't want to say comments, because it's actually actions, things that people need to go and do. And I love the fact that most probably the first thing that somebody in a leadership position must do is just to be a human being.
Yeah. It's about bringing humanity back into the workplace.
Yeah,
who said that? When do we lose it? When do we get rid of it?
Well, I don't know. If you look at human history, I'm not so sure. Anyway, so I'm going to close off with quickly going to which view? Where's my big screen view? To that view. If you want to make contact with Karen, there's her contact details. Or just go to LinkedIn, put in Karen Ferris, you'll find her at the top of the list. Go and read her blogs. Some cool videos also from her. Sort of two different link sites, I suppose, for the change leadership management stuff and for the more traditional IT service management stuff. Either one, that's how you can get a hold of her. And then just a quick reminder that you can listen to past episodes, and there's nearly 40 of them now, of Get It, where I talk to other interesting people like Karen. One of those other 40 is Karen, about interesting stuff. Thanks for being with us, and see you on the next one.